Someone's got to be the first to do it, though, to actually go through the process and actually make it a viable product.
It's the riskier approach.
Well, sure.
Because intrinsically, there's almost never money in very expensive products.
We're in a bit of a elite class of, shall we say, quality with headphones, because when we design and actually build something, we don't consider the cost. We just look at it as whatever it takes to get it done. But a majority, in terms of volume, a majority of the headphones that are out there that are made aren't made like that. They're we're talking, the $500 and under range, and U.S. dollars usually. Most headphones are probably, most people buy headphones are probably for $100, $200. Nowhere near this. So they have a completely different criteria in manufacturing than we would.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few misleading statements there. It's not so much that the cost isn't considered. It's that you could tolerate a high price if it gives you some return that you consider worthwhile. And a lot of times you see products, and they're made to be manufactured and sold in volume. And there's a lot of compromises that must be made in order to do that. There's certain manufacturing techniques and styles and stuff like that aren't feasible in high volume. It's just well beyond reasonable to be able to produce certain types of goods with certain methods. And as a result, as a consumer, you don't see most things made very well. Usually you see everything made in the same manner. And people complain they don't make fans like they used to and things like that. And there's some truth there, but it's mainly because consumers are buying
What, you talking about PC fans or something?
Like anything like a
like desk fans.
This is a common argument I've seen on like a desk fan or whatever, like a $20 little fan that oscillates or whatever.
Right.
You look at fans from
that's true.
Like
they used
the
to be made of
1900s,
metal.
and you're like, wow, look at how great this was. But you look at the prices on those. You adjust them for inflation. They were hundreds of dollars.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
They were very, very expensive.
Well, if you were to make a fan out of all metal today, which you can buy
you
them.
could, but who's going to
They're
buy
up
it?
there.
How many are you going to sell?
It's probably the same prices they were 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
But, inflation.
That's the reality. It's just not that you can't make something expensive.
I had that
Nobody
all
buys
metal
it.
fan from home, and it was pretty nice. I mean, it's nice. I don't know if the blades are metal though. I don't know if that was molded.
Well, there was different generations. You go to like the 1900s, 1910, 20 or something like that.
More modern, but
You used to be able to get them like the Sears catalog or
but it's
something.
caged and chrome-plated steel.
Yeah, big clunky switch.
And they're nice. I mean, there's something you have for 20,
Ever.
30 years. Yeah,
They probably still
till
work.
the motor fails.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you get what in other words, you get what you pay for a lot of times. Because
Maybe.
if they're taking that much care to build the chassis and the assembly, then chances are the motor's a higher quality, the power cord's a higher quality,
Well,
the on-off switch.
for the day, maybe.
I mean, well, I'm
But things were
saying,
pretty bad,
I'm
too.
saying, comparing to like looking at a modern fan, you go buy a Target. A
Right.
box fan with that turn switch that feels like it's going to break out the box.
Right. No,
You know?
that's exactly how they are.
Yeah.
But it's two different things here, because the desk fan that you're talking about that was all metal and stuff built in 1920, that cost something like $500 equivalent.
Yeah.
$500 for a desk fan is unfathomable by modern standards. Nobody would buy it.
You still see them at garage sales and estate sales too.
They still work,
They
yeah,
still
but
work. The cord's all frailed.
That's sort of misleading, because then
Wrong word.
you have survivorship bias there as well. I mean, you're only looking at the ones that still work.
Yeah.
The ones that don't work and broke 50 years ago, they got tossed to the curb long ago.
Yeah.
And you compare that to a desk fan today, that's $20, $10. It works, and usually it still outlives your need for it. Usually it'll still last longer than you need it to.
But the focus back on headphones themselves, because that's kind of the topic of the discussion. Like what are the things that we could pick out where corners have to be cut to meet a price point like that?
Well, see, that's the trouble. It's literally everywhere.
Well, yeah.
It totally and radically changes how the product is designed, built, manufactured, looks.
I mean, because just as simple as you couldn't CNC the entire frame because it would take too long.
Couldn't
If you had
CNC,
to mass produce it,
probably couldn't do any of it.
Well, you could, but then you need like 30,000 CNC room filled with them.
Yeah,
you need some scale.
Because I guess that's part of the reason is because at that price point in a few $100 range, the volume's way higher, right, in terms of sales. So you can't have one guy machining these things. It doesn't work like that,
Right.
or one machine making the parts for these things. It requires a factory with a lot of injection molding machines.
The sort of uncomfortable reality is if you want to make money selling a product it has to be cheap. It must be. If it's expensive, you can't make money selling it almost every time, unless there's inelastic demand, unless you're selling a product that people have to buy. If it's expensive, people don't buy it really. You sell in dramatically lower volume. So generally speaking, if you want to have something that actually makes the company money, you can't sell a headphone for $10,000, $50,000. You'll sell 7 of them or something, right? So you need to sell it for a few $100s, or what people consider to be reasonable. And in order to do that, of course, then you have other criteria that have to be met. You can't have a machined aluminum frame. You can't have exotic materials. You can't have anything handmade. It all has to be done in a way that's repeatable through some sort of industrial processes that are highly scalable and have almost no man hours put into it.
Yeah.
But there's high upfront cost there too.
Well, right. I mean, everything's optimized for a speed of assembly,
Manufacturability.
ease of manufacturing.
Yeah.
You know, how can we make these parts cheap and still have them function? Right. I mean, it's all about. It's going to be all plastic for the most part. It's got to be.
Almost
It's going to be
overall, yeah.
molded parts that they can. You know, what are you were looking in? We're starting to deal with more injection molded on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like for example, the ear pads. We have magnetic rings on there that need to be injection molded. It's a plastic
Yeah, it's a good
part.
process for that part.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, but you know, you got to have a mold made and the mold spec for how many pieces it's going to have to stamp out before you got to make a new mold because molds wear and all this stuff, right?
Right.
And everything's a cost factor involved. So you got to think about that. Like I remember back in the day, I used to work for Bowers and Wilkins, which was B&W back then, and also they were the same importer dealt with Rotel Electronics, right? And I used to we get a new line of Rotel Electronics, like let's say a CD player or something. And I would see that stuff was made in Taiwan, but it was designed in UK. I don't know. Anyway, out of Taiwan would have a spec sheet with every part in the piece, and it would have a cost price associated down to like 1,000th of a cent or some shit like that. You know, they figured it out to like 3 places past the dollar sign, so to speak, right? And you think about it, they have to look at every part, a screw, an insert, everything, a washer, a gasket, right? It might, even if it was a fraction of a cent, it was on the list that tallied up what it cost to make.
Right.
And this is how they look at it. This is how manufacturing and volume looked at it. Because even if you're, well, you know, think about it. Like if you're Apple and you're making 100 million of something, right? And it's a penny, the
Yeah.
part's a penny. That's still a shitload of money at cost,
It's
right?
$1 million.
$1 million. Yeah, a penny.
Right.
And you wouldn't think shit about it in our end of things because big deal, it's a
Yeah,
penny or
yeah.
a dollar. It wouldn't even matter. But when you're making 100 million of something, it's crazy expensive.
Well, yeah, auto manufacturers, they're big on that. Like, yeah, if we just get rid of this screw, it saves us $1 million.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's a common tactic. And a lot of times you could ship the exact same product to the customer. It doesn't change the perceived value, the durability, the reliability, but it costs you less to make. And that's a lot of what you get with consumer products. They have to be as cheap as possible. And as a result of that, to some extent, the lowest bidder is the one that wins. The one that's able to sell you a similar product for the lowest price, is the one that sells the most. So there's competition, effectively a race to the bottom in that sense in almost every space. It's hyper competitive if you're talking high volume manufacturing. So everyone is looking. They're competing to say, how can we ship you a product that's the worst version of the product possible?
The worst.
Like literally, that's what's
right.
they're trying to deliver
still
value,
functions.
but how can we deliver you the product that functions
Right.
that's as cheap to manufacture as possible?
And there's no way around it. I mean, you think about it, there's no way around it. If you're counting pennies, or
Well,
fractions of a percent.
Until you get to like, when you know you have like, you know, going to have hundreds of millions of things made, then you can actually make things actually really nice and high volume, like your smartphone, right? They're very well made machines, stainless steel and all that. But you know, they know that they're going to sell 100 million of them, so
Yeah.
they have the ability to, you know, use 30,000 CNCs, right?
The
That's the
investment
only way
is
you can do that.
staggering.
Yeah. Well, we are calling out two extremes. We're
Yeah.
calling out, 100 million piece manufacturing
Right. Well, that
versus,
is exaggeration.
versus us, which is
Yeah.
nowhere near that,
Yeah.
in terms of the boutique end of things. But
But it kind of sort of outlines
But
the
think
issue.
about all the manufacturing that goes on in between that kind of volumes, where you got a reasonable amount, like 100,000 pieces or even 1 million pieces a year. Now you're in the middle, right? You're weighing out,
Right.
who's going to make the part? Are we going to do it in house? Are we going to farm it out? Is someone else going to do it? You think about you really got to get you got to have a structure. Like you got to know, in terms of when you're designing a new product, think about the processes that probably everyone has to go through, including ourselves, to work up, okay, how are we going to actually do this? I mean, I remember like years ago, I don't know if it was us, but I remember one time I said, well, one of our years ago, maybe when we first started looking into making a headphone, we said, well, maybe we could have a contest and have other people design the headphone shape for us, right?
Yeah.
And I think we did that on a small scale. And we got, basically you're dealing with graphics people, artists that sketch out and make, this is what we think a headphone would be cool to look for, right? Now, what was the problem with that?
You can't make it.
We can't make it. Yeah.
Every time, too.
Yeah,
it wasn't
right.
like a few of them.
Looks
None
cool,
of them.
but how the hell do you make the thing?
Yeah.
Right.
And
that's an incredibly common issue.
Yeah.
And the consumers don't probably recognize it because everything they see is made, obviously, right?
You don't see those crazy designs.
You could design something that
do.
can't be made.
You'll get, they got cars come out every year
Right.
that can't be made.
They make one off.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You got to make it by some exotic process,
Yeah.
and in production,
Hand.
it's too unreasonable.
Yep.
And people think, well, how much extra would it cost? $500, $5,000? That's the difference. Usually, if something's difficult to manufacture, the price doesn't go up a little bit; it goes up a lot, 2 times, 5 times, 10 times.
Speaking of cars, like what classic comes to mind to me would be the Batmobile.
right,
Where there was one made, and that's all they ever had through the whole freaking series, the original Batman series from I don't know, was it the '60s or whatever?
Yeah.
In fact, that Batmobile, I think the original guy that designed it, remember, was it Pickers, that show? They visited his place, and he has thousands of sketches of ideas of cars that he had come up with, that were never produced because why would you make it and how would you make it?
Right.
You could spend millions to make one car, and who's going to buy it?
Well, you look at all the concept cars. There's a lot of cool concept cars, and they made one, right? So clearly you could make more, but the trouble is usually the process they done to make that product is, it's like hand-laid carbon and things like that.
Yeah.
That would just be way too expensive to do in volume.
Yeah, everything's like 3D printed and like
Stuff like that, yeah.
They
It would
take
just,
like
this car
15
costs
hours.
$7 million to make.
It takes like a year to make one car.
Right.
As it goes steps through the various stages and processes.
You couldn't make 100,000 of them a year or 1 million of these a year.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's the
how many
issue.
cars do Bugatti make a year?
And not many. Yeah.
Under 1,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So if you bring it back to headphones, sort of, you look at the headphones that are commercially viable, that are on the market, that you could go and buy. They use a lot of injection molded plastics because it's cheap, it's easy to produce in volume, it works well, it's decent. But there's a lot of ways you could cut corners. Usually what they do is they mislead consumers by saying, oh, there's metal, or it's a metal headphone or something like that. But what they mean is the main structure, the difficult part, is made out of plastic, injection molded. And then it's covered or concealed by wood or some sort of material like a metal or something. And then people get misled into thinking that it's like a titanium frame or something.
It's a mix.
But it's not. It's plastic covered in a material. So the structure is plastic, the important component, right? If you drop it, the stress, the impact goes on the plastic, right?
It's a veneer essentially.
It's a veneer of aluminum or plastic.
Well, that and
or
they have to
whatever,
use
that
metals
style.
because it's the only way to have a polished, like if you want something that looks like chrome or shiny,
Yeah.
doing that with plastics is pretty difficult to do. I mean,
I mean, you can.
yeah,
Depends on what you're trying to do.
right,
You see chrome plastics in consumer goods.
right.
Yeah, they're not durable.
No.
But that's
So-
sort of the issue. There's corners cut everywhere. Usually it's designed around the appearance, not the performance. So it's designed to look a certain way, but it doesn't perform well, right? Like you compare it to something like this. This is a kind of an extreme example. This is a very robust, durable frame design. There's no additional components. There's no glues or adhesive holding the frame together.
Yeah, it's one piece.
Let's cover it. Should cover it. What's in this?
I mean, I can get a frame.
underneath the frame, like for example, the headband. It's a hardened steel band in the headband, one piece.
Right. And the more important thing is
It won't-
the way it's
it's-
affixed on each end, because this is the important thing, I think. A lot of times in consumer goods, especially things like a headphone like this, something like this headband, the way it's affixed to the frame assembly can be the failure point. Because usually the headband won't fail.
It's almost always
the
the failure
frame won't
point.
fail.
That's where
It's
all
the
the stress
connection.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Usually the
Where one
connection
part
is
meets the
issue.
other is always a problem.
Right. You use
On
like
anything.
a glue or a snappy thing or something. There's a million different things, a threaded fastener into plastic. But under high stress, the fasteners could rip out. The threads could pull out of the plastic. The insert could get pulled out of the
Or
plastic.
over time,
something
the
like
whole
that.
thing loosens up.
Yeah.
Or you get fractures in the plastic and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas compared to something like this assembly, this is 7075 machined aluminum. you have good consistency, reliability, or it's a robust design. The fasteners are thread into a formed hole in 70-75 aluminum. And the boss is sized sufficiently so that you're not going to get the fasteners
To
ever
hold the
going up.
stress.
Unlike plastics, there's no real issues with creep in aluminum, so you won't get deformation over time.
Not only that, at least 2 axes or 2.5, even if you want to look at it that way, the steel band is cut out to fit over the bosses.
Right.
So the screws aren't actually holding most of the force. The bosses are holding the force to the steel band. The screws are just kind of keeping it together.
The screws provide a clamping load to retain the mechanism.
So
but
the load's not placed
they
on the
don't
screws.
go through the screws.
Right.
Right.
And you could do that because the whole thing's metal.
Right.
I mean, but with plastics you can't do that because you're holding you're holding a weak part with a weak part.
It would be difficult to do something like that with a plastic part. It would be much weaker. Not to say you couldn't do it; it'd be fine. It would
You have
work.
to be pretty chunky.
But if you sat on it, it would break.
Yeah.
Probably, or it'd have to be chunkier.
yeah, this
to
would just
accommodate
hurt
it.
if you sat on it.
Right.
Well, we did the first ones we made for the prototypes were plastic because they were easy to laser cut,
Yeah.
and then they were not durable. So
No.
we had to
Yeah.
make them out of metal.
Yeah, well, 3D printing and all that makes it easy nowadays to kind of play, but in the end, we can't even tune a headphone with a 3D print because it actually sounds different. Like the shell stuff and that. We could do it for appearance, looks, fit,
Right.
but then when you get down to actually doing it for a final product, you actually got to make the parts and sometimes remake them over and over again
Usually,
until
yeah.
you get to where you actually want to
Yeah,
be.
I don't think you ever have the first one on the first try.
No,
This is it.
yeah. It's a refinement process that you go through for the finished product, and that's something you probably wouldn't do in a plastic component because,
It's very
Very
expensive.
expensive.
yeah, right.
Keep
It's
getting
just-
new molds made. Yeah.
Right, yeah. You probably basically the way it fits, the way it works, it's already done in
Or you
in,
just try to make it work.
in the computer. Yeah, and it's pretty much.
You would make it work. Yeah.
and it boils down to experience level of the designer at that point. How many of these have you made
Right.
that snap together, and do they hold up over time? And,
You see that a lot in consumer
You know?
products, especially things with snap fits. Snap fits tend to be quite difficult to get just right. And it's sort of kind of like a touchy-feely thing. It's very hard to predict ahead of time if you want a very particular sound or feel. And very few companies, maybe like aside from Apple, spend time getting the sound of like a mechanism to be just right, because it usually means 30 injection molds or something like that, which you could spend thousands, tens, $20,000 on each injection mold run, and it could take a month to do one. So it could be a very considerable time and cost to get a sound right, whereas most people consider it to be irrelevant. So on like headband adjustment mechanisms and things like that on headphones, a lot of times those are injection molded parts riding on like a groove or something. Like they're done in some way that's manufacturable, of course. And there's only a handful of ways you could do it really cheap.
There's some sort of spring-loaded mechanism
Yeah.
that it's going to last 100,000 cycles.
It'll last
and
long
it's
enough.
It'll quit.
Probably, yeah.
It's going to fail at some
But in
point.
extreme conditions, you'll get early failures. But for the most part, it's fine. It works, right? It just depends on your design philosophy. But if you want it to sound a certain way or feel a certain way, that's incredibly difficult
Yeah, right.
to do it with that method.
Well, you can't just like look at the CAD model and be like, yeah, I know what that's going to feel like. You know?
You would have to have experience
Yeah.
having done that.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah. Which I mean, if you're just regurgitating the same design, that's not as difficult to do. But
That's why
Yeah.
you see companies doing that
what
because
they-
of the certainty.
yeah, right.
You see a lot of companies that's like, well, we've done it this way for 50 years, so they keep doing it that way.
In fact, you look at the headphones in general, and that's kind of the way it is. I mean, aside from the higher end, right, where you see like us and a handful of other manufacturers have unique designs,
Yeah.
but relatively speaking, when you look at the bulk of the volume of headphones that are out there, they're making the same way
Same
they were
thing.
20, 30 years ago. Dynamic drivers just stamped out. Mylar drivers and
Well-
hardwired cheap cables
I
coming
mean,
out. And,
it's
it
a
is what
case
it
of
is.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, really.
Well, it depends on your goal. A lot of companies are trying to make headphones to make money. And that's the reality, especially obviously in the consumer space, like in high margin, high profit industry or high volume.
They
high
have
margin
many people to
industries.
answer to in terms of profit.
They just want to make the same thing and hope people buy it. And they want to push high volume. And that works. There's a proven formula. If you don't care that you're making headphones, you just happen to be making headphones, that's a formula that works. Now, luckily, you don't really see that too much in the high end. Most people in the high end space, intrinsically, because of the high prices, means very low volume and tends to mean your profit's quite limited. You don't see people that aren't in it for anything other than just making a cool product. a lot
Well,
of times.
yeah, and to expand on it too. I mean, when the reality is that's something that's a misnomer where people think, well, it's so expensive, you guys are making a lot of money, and the reality of it is that's not the case. To make a very low volume product, you still need infrastructure. You need a building. You need the machinery. You need the people that run the machinery. You need inventory. You need raw materials. You need everything that a big manufacturer needs. The little guy needs too, and that's all money.
Well, and
That's, I mean, you're
Since
you're paying for the
it's very
ability.
expensive.
It's very expensive.
well, and you're running at such lower volume that you pay more for everything.
yeah, right.
Every part costs more.
Yeah.
All materials cost
Yeah,
more.
right. Yeah, and I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. You need an infrastructure, and so, you see a lot of companies don't do it like we did. They'll what we call farm out, but they'll have
Yeah.
other manufacturers make the parts for them, and that limits your ability to be creative because how many you go to somebody say make this part, say okay, we'll make the first one for you for $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like it, it's going to be another $10,000 to make another one and another one until you like it. So
The issue there is
know.
consumers don't really see this, but you don't get feedback when you go to
Right.
a manufacturer. When you go somewhere and say, hey, can you make this? They'll say either yes or no, and they either make it or they don't. They very rarely want to hold your hand and tell you why it was hard to make, why
Well,
it cost
yeah.
this. So
And they don't care either.
They don't really
They just want to move on to the next quote. They're just
Right.
quoting parts. They don't care if you're flushing toilets with the part as long as
Doesn't matter
they're just
to them,
making
right?
parts.
They're making the part.
to a spec.
right?
Yeah.
And they'll make you the part as you ask for it, probably. Sure, no problem. Your costs will be a little higher if you have someone else do it versus if you bring the skill in-house and you're very good at it. But the real issue is it's very hard to iterate and improve when you have someone else doing it because you don't know how it's made. You don't know the problems that they saw when they were making this part. And you see this with a lot
Or
of
if they even
manufacturers.
cared about the problems.
Sure, right. So they'll get a part and it'll work, it'll be fine, but they don't know that there's a cost driver, there's a design in this part that makes it difficult to manufacture. And they could design it out, no problem, but they don't know about it because they're not
In
manufacturing
other words, there might be a
it.
better way to do it.
Yeah, there's always a better way to do it.
In terms of making the part. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have no way to know that because you're not making the
But
part.
when you're not doing it, it's
Yeah,
fine.
right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there is a whole different problem, and we ran into this where you go to someone that's like, oh, they meet all the things, they have the machines we need, they can make our parts, and they don't even want to deal with you because you're like, you want how many?
Yeah, right.
5,000?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow.
Yeah, they hang up the phone.
Yeah, right. They don't even, or they don't even
never respond
Yeah,
or
right.
answer to you again.
It is
Yeah.
incredibly difficult to get people to make things.
Yeah.
And over and over and over. This is
Well-
actually where I spent a lot of my time.
Yeah, right.
Trying to get people to make something.
Yeah.
You contact them like, can you make this? Usually you'll get a, oh yeah, and then you ask them some more questions and no response ever.
Because we're
They
always
just do
looking
not
for
respond.
we're always looking for crazy shit with crazy specs.
I want to push the limits.
Which
yeah.
is why we usually tend to wind up figuring out how to make it ourselves in house because nobody wants to do it for us.
I mean, the perfect example is the screws on the back of Diana. They come in a 10-pack box, a little box. They only come in 10. And he called the manufacturer. It's like, can we get a bigger pack? Because we just have a stack of these boxes with
Right.
nothing in them, right?
Right.
And nope. They don't
They
even
won't
want to.
sell.
They
That's the
don't.
way-
They
that's
don't
the way
even.
they-
They come in 10
that's
packs.
the way they
so we
distribute
buy
it. Yeah.
Boxes.
They
of
want to
10.
sell literally tens of millions of them.
Yeah.
Like, well,
10
we
at a
don't need
time.
10
Yeah,
million
right, right.
fasteners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
They
Well,
want like
that-
a truckload of screws.
Again, that's a subset of a specialty product.
Yeah.
It's a specialty screw.
Right.
And that's the way it goes with this stuff. It's
it's just a hat, and now you got to
yeah.
open all these boxes. It's all this waste.
But yeah, we can go on and on forever. But I think bottom line is I think people starting to get the idea that there's quite a difference in perspective when you're making a boutique product like this in low volume versus, anything else. It's just a completely different manufacturing perspective and tooling up for it and doing everything is just, it's extremely costly for a low volume product, which is why the price what it is associated with that, And but anyway, which reminds me, we never talked about the stand here.
Well, this is a good example of what we were talking about.
yeah,
Because I think people get a little confused on this one. You could buy stands at lower cost, of course.
Sure.
This is a different stand, right? It is rather expensive to manufacture, and as a result, the price represents that. I think it's a cool stand, but of course, if you don't want to spend that much money on a stand, there's alternative options.
Yeah.
I think that's a good
we're
thing.
not twisting anyone's
right?
arm.
Like that seems like a positive
There
thing
are-
to
there are other
enhance
possibilities,
the
sure.
range of capabilities in headphone stands, right? Because of course, intrinsically with a high price, it means you get very low volume. Like not everyone and their grandma is going to be buying this. Makes sense. But you look at like headphones or any product, a lot of times products simply don't exist because there isn't a big market for them. And that's sort of, I guess, what I've always thought
Agreed.
was interesting, like making things that don't exist,
Right.
that you can't buy.
Well, that's funny,
That
but
seems to be the more interesting thing.
and I mean, this seems like, to me, well, to us in general, it seems logical. Although a lot of people are going to go, are you crazy? You're making a $500 headphone stand? It's like, well, no, we're not crazy because we don't want to make a million of these things.
Yeah, we don't
we're
expect
making
to
them,
sell
We're
a lot.
making them
Can't
one at a
either.
time. And we're making it for people that want something that's really nice. It's not, stamped out in a foreign country. This is made, we're doing what we can here, but bottom line is that, I thought about, I think like you just suggested, the problem is people don't realize that it's available because it isn't. A lot of times the product doesn't even exist.
Right.
There are people who want nicer stuff, believe it or not, right? Who can't buy it because it doesn't exist.
Because it's not commercially viable. Because this stand is not commercially viable.
Agreed.
Like it doesn't make
Yeah, you'd have to be
money.
nuts to make a stand like
Yeah,
this.
it's ridiculous.
Seriously.
Yeah.
We are.
We weren't
But-
going to make it at one point. Cause
No,
it was
at
like,
one point I pretty much said, it was on a back burner phone. I was like, nah, I don't think we need to do this.
We
But
probably shouldn't sell it to consumers. It probably should just go to dealers and stuff to have a demo our headphones.
yeah,
Because there's
Well,
no money in it.
and it
that's
will,
for
and
sure.
it can. But yeah, right. Bottom line is, right. We're not getting rich making a freaking stand for a
No.
headphone. Trust me. That not this.
Not at these
stand.
prices. No, who's going to buy it?
Yeah. But
That's kinda how it
But
works.
that's the thing, right? Is like now it does exist, and now there's another reference or stepping point in the marketplace
Right.
for things in between. Doesn't have to be a $500 stand. Hell, I even heard that some people are custom making headphone stands for people for $600-700. They're making them one at a time by hand.
Yeah.
All right. And again, that there are
They
people
probably sell 10 a year
The
or
reason,
something.
right? And
Yeah.
the reason they're making it is because people want it.
yeah.
It's not, they're not forcing it on anybody. Saying, "Oh, you gotta buy it." It's like people want a better piece.
Some people do. And if you
That's-
don't, that's cool. There's plenty of options on the market,
Yeah.
right?
But that's the thing with all this stuff is like to me, there's a higher end to everything. And let's explore that. I remember one thing. The one thing I could think of is like the toilet seats. I brought this up a while ago, but Zeos actually. I don't know what his channel's called. Zeos.
Z Reviews.
Yeah, Z Reviews. Right. He reviewed the Toto heated
washlet.
washlet Toto seats. And when I caught that video, I'm like, Jesus, I never even realized that I could buy that thing. Right? I mean, I just didn't think about
Like
it.
a $1,100
I've seen them
toilet
like in
seat.
Japan, right?
Yeah.
And every toilet in Japan is like stock with these things, right? They're just part of it. It's not not necessarily a total, but yeah. But I didn't know you could get that. And when I saw it, and then he put the the clear plastic over the seat, and then made it function. Put some weight on the toilet seat, so you could watch it spray through the cellophane. And I'm like, that's pretty cool how this thing works. And it's got heated water. And I mean, bottom line is that I bought one. And and because I thought that'd be a cool thing to have in one of the bathrooms in the home, not all of them, but in one of them, and it is. But my point is that if it didn't exist, or if someone didn't show it to me that it can exist, I wouldn't have it. And I think that's part of the challenge in any industry is like, someone's got to be the first, right? Someone's got to say, hey, you could make this, and then find out if somebody actually wants to buy it. Someone's got to be the first to do it, though, to actually go
Right,
through
sure.
the process and actually make it a viable product.
It's the riskier approach.
Well, sure.
Because intrinsically, there's almost never money in very expensive products unless they're served in a particular market. Like, say, watches or something like that. Sometimes there actually is a big enough market where you can make money. But overwhelmingly, if you're selling something that's way up there in the price points, you really don't have the margins that you have in the lower ranges. A lot of times you could sell something for 10 times less in dollars per unit and still make 100 times as much money. But for some reason, public perception is high price means high margin and high profit. But it's not the reality.
No, it's actually the opposite. It's just
It's interesting because you don't see manufacturers making high price things very often because there's no money in it.
Yeah, I think both ends of the spectrum certainly have their challenges.
For sure.
They really do. You
But
know,
it's not easy to make high volume products cheap.
no, right. 'Cause,
Incredibly competitive.
No, there's a ton of overhead there too, and it's the same with the low volume product line too. That's that's why I always thought the coolest business model was the guys that sell what we call in economics they called widgets. How many widgets can you
You
sell?
know, like razor blades.
That was like
Yeah.
the razor blade with a little holder.
Yeah.
You know, that you just you sell 100 million a year, and like, you know, it's just a widget factory.
You got to get a monopoly on the market.
Yeah. Or coat hangers used to be like that. You ever see these? I mean, these guys that had coat hanger factories actually were multi-millionaires.
Well, now there's probably a bazillion different coat hanger
Yeah.
factories.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Well, now they're
different types.
plastic injected.
Yeah.
You know, they're
You
not.
can still get metal ones,
Yeah.
but mainly plastic.
Yeah, right. But it's funny how that whole thing's changed. Where there was one kind of coat hanger back in the day, and then you had your fancy wooden ones that
Oh,
were
yeah.
for suits.
Not a
and
lot of innovation in the coat hanger.
Yeah,
No,
right.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, clothes haven't changed much in the past couple hundred years.
Yeah,
You know?
there's
But
a
see,
lot.
that's exact situation that really coming out with a high-end product, there's an incredibly low demand for. There's no doubt there would be some number of people that would want to spend $20 on a coat hanger,
Sure.
and maybe they exist. I don't know. I've never looked.
Me neither.
But the demand has got to be incredibly low. So you never see it in stores. As a consumer, you assume it doesn't exist because it hasn't been presented to you.
Yeah, you get your 10-pack for $3 or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
you're good to go.
I know some things I know in the past over the years I've gotten. They come with those nice wooden coat hangers,
Yeah.
and I don't like using them, but I like keeping them for some reason. They just look nice.
I'm like,
It
yeah,
seems to be another one of those topics
Oh,
we
yeah.
could ramble on.
Yeah,
and
maybe
say,
we'll
"Oh,
do
I
a
don't know
video
where
on
we're
coat
going."
hangers.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll slam the
hangers.
refrigerator doors and then show us coat
Yeah,
hangers.
I'm actually a bit of an enthusiast of coat hangers
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Really like examining.
The
don't like
shape
the-
matters.
Well, yeah, I don't like those velvety ones, you know?
Yeah, I
And
know.
then stuff gets
They
stuck. You
wear
can't,
out.
you can't go like this and pull
Yeah.
stuff off.
And I don't really like metal hooks because they scratch the shit out of the current day. You have those white
Yeah.
bars in the closet,
Oh, yeah.
and it takes the paint off them over time.
True.
You know, so you need more of
Maybe
a
like
less,
an
less
insert.
abrasive, something like a Teflon coated.
A laser cut stainless
Yeah.
steel coat
Here we
hanger
go
shape.
again. Now we're gonna have to
like
make
those,
a high-end coat
the,
hanger.
the little like wheelie ball things for your
Ooh,
shower
yeah,
curtain
yeah,
thing, like
yeah.
that, so they roll nice.
Yeah, Teflon balls. Yeah, like an open bearing.
This is gonna be a $200 coat
That would
hanger.
be cool though. We could put letters on the bearings too. It spells something like the brand of the coat hanger, like goddamn expensive coat hanger.com.
.com. Patent pending.
We gotta go. Hit like all the time, right?
Yeah,
and
all
you
the
got to
time.
subscribe. We're still trying to get to 20,000
We're trying.
subscribers.
Yeah,
If you haven't done this and you're on a TV, which I know you can't subscribe on a TV,
Yeah, go on your
Go to your
phone.
phone, your laptop.
Click the button.
Go to YouTube, Abyss Headphones, search for it, click subscribe. And that way you'll know what's coming next, because I know a lot of people say, I intermittently watch their videos, but I don't know when they're coming up. Well, if you subscribe, hopefully
Then you'll know.
YouTube will tell you what's next.
Yeah.
It's true.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.